Hello, I am Oliver Browne, the founder of True Summit Adventures and the host of this podcast. I've been super fortunate the last few years to have met some amazing adventure athletes, and they're going to be coming on this podcast and talking about what they've been up to, what it means to them, the successes, the failures, the tragedies even. So I hope it'll be interesting, I hope it'll be insightful, and I hope you enjoy. Let's dive in. Okay, so it's a real treat this evening. We're in conversation with super elite alpinist David Goettler. David, thank you so much for being the first guest on the True Summit podcast. When I came up with this idea...
Thank you for that. I'm the kind of first guest. I mean, what an honor, really.
Well, the honor's ours. I mean, when I thought about who I could ask, you were the top of the list straight away. And I kind of knew you would say yes as well, because you're super down to earth. You're a super approachable and generous guy. So thank you very much. I won't shower you with too many superlatives, because I know that you'll be embarrassed.
Don't do that. Thank you.
Well, let's say congratulations, because you have just done something remarkable. You climbed Everest solo alpine style without supplemental oxygen. How was it?
Thank you very, very much. And it was amazing. But just for clarification here, because I'm very kind of careful which terms I use, and I think that's a great way to start here, is that actually I would never describe it as alpine style or solo, because for me these two things are not possible on a 8,000 meter peak like Everest. When I move on the normal route, I always say it was solo with 600 other people, and I use the fixed ropes, which absolutely kind of eliminate the kind of character of alpine style. But for me it was important to kind of climb without supplementary oxygen, and that I don't have a sherpa who carries all my gear like up and down the mountain. So there comes this kind of notation towards maybe alpine style, but like I said, I would never kind of allow it to be called on a Everest normal route that way.
Okay, then well, fair enough, and thanks for clarifying. But I think it was, I think it was a remarkable achievement, a remarkable feat of human endurance. It wasn't the first attempt. I mean, tell us about what was different this time, because was it the fourth attempt?
Well, I mean, it depends like how you put it. Actually, I had 5 times the Everest permit, and the first 2 times there was the earthquake, and then first was the big avalanche on the south side on the Khumbu icefall, when a lot of Sherpas died and they closed the mountain, and I wasn't even in base camp. So I don't consider that as a real kind of attempt. And then the next year I went to the north side and there was the earthquake, and I also just arrived in base camp, and I also don't consider that as a real attempt, because actually I never kind of I took really one step on Everest on these both attempts. So, and then 2019 I came back, and I was as well alone and just on the normal route, and I had to turn around 100 meters below the summit. So it's like I was just beyond the south summit, and there were just too many people on that day. It was this famous picture on the, I think, 22nd of May, which went like totally viral, and where this line of people were on the kind of Hillary step and from the south to the main summit. And I was a day later on 23rd, and exactly the same kind of like crowd was still up there. I knew it could always be a possibility, and I tried to make it kind of work for me in terms of when to start and how to avoid it. But somehow it didn't work out, and I turned around. And then 2021 in spring, I came back. This was like 2020 was closed because of the pandemic. And then 2021, I came back in spring and teamed up with Kilian Jornet. And we turned around on the South Col on the last camp there. We tried to climb it in kind of fast style. And we didn't feel good. It was just like something felt off for both of us, and we just had a short conversation and like, hey, something feels off. We always kind of fall asleep on the way up to the south col, and it was this kind of 5 seconds of sleeping, falling asleep when you just like have a break, and it was not right. We both are experienced enough that we know how it should feel at this altitude, and so it was pretty clear we'd turn around there. And then so this year again, so this is then kind of my official third attempt. I always say I came back, and this year things were different in many ways, and it was mentally quite challenging in some ways. It was on other sides it was easier, but somehow in the end I was really lucky, and all these kind of puzzle pieces came perfectly together on this one day when you're up there, you're going towards the summit. And it was, I think, one of the most intense and magic days I probably ever had in the mountains, because in the end I ended up having this whole Everest summit bridge to myself. I was really literally alone there, from the south summit to the main summit and back to the Hillary step. There was nobody. Most of the big teams were already anyway finished, and on this day I would guess there were maybe 15 to, I don't know, 10 to 15 climbers going from the south col up. So anyway, quite few, and I had kind of like, some of them were already, everybody was with oxygen on the day, and some were already kind of coming down, and then there were some which were really super slow and they were behind. And so, and I was there totally alone, and I never had this on a 8,000 meter peak, that I really felt had this kind of flow state somehow. And it's not really this kind of flow. I mean, it's really difficult to describe, but I think flow state kind of describes it the best, like somebody maybe would kind of, can relate to it then. And I had this constant conversation with myself up there, which was, I never had that. And because I had nobody else to kind of talk or get disrupted. So, and the conditions were really good, like light breeze, but sunny. It was warm the whole night. I started 9:30 in the evening, and I walked the whole night up there, and I arrived then with the first sunlight somewhere at 8:06 or something like this. The sun started and warming up a little bit more, but I didn't have cold in the night. It was also really good. And so it was and then I had this kind of constant conversation with myself, and I always kind of checked in with myself, and it was always like, hey David, do you feel you have still the power in the legs for the way back? Because this is, how it is up there. I mean, you know how this altitude, especially then on the way down, suddenly how difficult it gets. And the people always kind of, this is where most of the accidents happens, and I know that this is where actually then it gets really tough. So it's not only the part up, which is like kind of where you get your success. Your success is really happening when you arrive safe and sound and without help in base camp, for me. And so for me, that was always there on my mind, and I felt I was really on this kind of very edge of where I feel I was kind of okay with going towards the summit. So that's why I was really checking in with myself every time. And when I kind of had something, when I did like 2 steps down, because you have the ridge, which has these small up and downs here and there, and a little bit kind of climbing, a little bit more technical parts. And every part there was really kind of, okay, remember, you have to go this back. You can do this. And okay, I think I can do it. And okay, let's go further. And then you have your timing of you have your try to keep a rhythm, and it always gets kind of disrupted because suddenly there's like a rock you have to step over, or this kind of thing, and this throws you totally under the bus up there. It's so crazy how different that is compared to lower down, where you just like do a step over a rock and it doesn't matter. And up there suddenly it's like, oh my god, now I need 10 more breaths and like whatever endless break afterwards. So and then arriving to the summit was incredible.
Yeah, it's amazing you talk about the internal conversation, because that's something I think about a lot, and how I speak to myself and during the events, and that's super interesting, managing this conversation with yourself. And what did you get when you got to the top? How was it? I mean, it looked like picture perfect conditions. It was sunny, blue skies.
I mean, it was really perfect, but again, I was not completely in this awe and celebrating mode, and everything fell off. I was still totally trying to stay like concentrated, and I also had this tension. I felt this tension of and fear of that. Hey, I need to like kind of, you know, still everything kind of get together, and I need to stay composed in a way and concentrated and energized in the way that I have to get down now. And so this was holding me back from really this. Maybe people think you like up there and you kind of totally like, yeah, like champagne and party, but it was not for me, because yeah. I totally was really kind of afraid of that, you know, of the descent in a way, and not afraid in a kind of bad way, but just this kind of huge respect I had from it. And so, and that's why I was so like, I stayed maybe 3 to 5 minutes. I haven't timed it, or I haven't looked. I had my watch on it. It took me 12-hour-20 from the south col from the last camp up to the summit. And then on the way down, my watch kind of, you know, just like when you come on this flat part towards the south col, my watch died. So it was 5 hours until there, and then it took me probably another hour to reach my tent there. So it's 6 hours down. But these 6 hours, they felt pretty long, and especially the first part from the main summit to the south summit, where you have this kind of uphill sections, because after the south summit is all really only down, so you never have to take any step up. But even that is really exhausting, like just going down where you normally just like slog down. I mean, I just shared this video on my Instagram feed yesterday, I think it was, or the day before, where you see like how slow I walk down. And for me, I always looking at now, and I'm kind of glad that I have it, to have this reminder, because that's what often then kind of with time gets so blurry, and you put your own, if I wouldn't see that picture and how I look there and how tired I am, I would already start to kind of change a little bit my narrative or my perspective on it. I was like, yeah, actually the going down was not too bad, and was kind of like, yeah. And so I think it's really good. We have nowadays this really like this kind of reminders of with this kind of footage, and you really can kind of check in with reality more or less from time to time.
I mean, did you feel fully cognizant the whole time? I mean, did you feel within yourself the whole time?
That is really a good question, and it's really interesting, because actually this time I felt totally sharp and really didn't struggle. 2019, when I was there on the South Summit, I felt way more that I had to kind of, you know, concentrate and do my things, and I did the right things at that time. But for example, I changed my sunglasses to ski goggles 2019, and it made totally sense from the time of the day and the conditions and everything. But I can't remember when I did this in 2019. And this year I remember, yeah, almost everything really. And I never had this also, when I look to how I talk into the camera up there, I really talk very like not mixing words. I make real sentences. I have other like selfie videos or video footage from, I don't know, from Browne, from Broad Peak, for example, where I make this sentence where it's like, I don't know, completely wrong, and there are way too long breaks, and you know, things like this, where you also have the feeling, if you would ask me afterwards, I would say, yeah, we were totally fine there, and everything was kind of razor sharp. but this is really what I meant with this kind of video footage from yourself up there is sometimes really scary, because it shows you suddenly like actually you were not really as sharp as you think. And but there comes again, I think, shows just really how important it is to have a lot of the kind of safety things, especially like how you move up there, how you change ski to sunglasses. All of this need to be way more intuitive and not anymore that you have to think about. It's not a conscious decision. It's all kind of unconscious. It must be kind of ingrained in your movement patterns, in your body, in your decision making also, without this kind of really sinking to it. And I think this is the more important, the more, of course, you kind of go to this kind of limits of where on the one side also humans are just like, because up there it's really just this kind of, we are operating on the edge what's possible, I would say, from just the physiology, and as well, of course, from the technical side, where you are kind of, and what is your experience where you kind of operate and move.
So is it that prescriptive? Do you have like you're following a plan? You're saying like, at this point, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to change this piece of equipment, or I'm going to eat this, or are you going through like a list in your head during the ascent, like of like the battle orders, the plan?
Well, I have, like, for sure, for some things I have, and others I need to adjust. If the weather gets worse, I need to early enough take my other gloves or take the ski goggles instead of the thing. And then the kind of nutrition, and this is kind of more where you kind of, I make already up before, like I say, okay, arriving at the balcony, for sure, I eat there something. I need to have, like, I had 5 bars, I had 2 gels, 2 bars, and 1 this kind of energy goo jelly things, the shot blocks, I think they call it now. And so I already knew, okay, where I want to eat more or less what, and that I, for example, the gels, I want to have 1 left for the way down, because I know they really give me a good boost. And from the drinking, I know also, okay, I want to drink on the balcony for sure as much as possible, because anyway, I know afterwards it's getting just colder and colder, and in the end it freezes. And so still I had a little bit left then for kind of around the south summit. So I have this kind of points where I try to like do my nutrition plan, for example, and then I have for sure checkpoints or things like I said, for example, when I knew there were more people, it's like the crucial part is South Summit to the main summit. And so how busy it is there before you can always easily overtake, and it's no problem. So this is the point where I have to check this, if this is kind of an issue. And if it's an issue, then I already try to make a decision when I'm down, when I'm in base camp, when I'm in a space where I can really think long about it. And the same is, of course, for timing, when I'm like, okay, what time I think I will, how much time it will probably take me to the summit from the South Col, and if I'm being totally out of that time, I also just need to turn around. It doesn't matter if I'm too slow. And then, of course, like how you feel in general. If I would always kind of fall asleep in the night, it's a sign where you really need to start to be careful.
Yeah. You made a great post beforehand where you talked about putting your chips on the table for Everest again, and pride and your ego, and how because of the sort of history behind this ascent, how much pressure did you feel? Did you feel more pressure this time? Did you feel like not a last chance, but like you were going to push it a bit harder this time? Or if it hadn't happened for you, could you go again? Did this all play on your mind?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's also really tricky. Or I try to be aware of this situation, and for example, taking more risk. I was asking myself before, will I take, just because I'm again there and again and again, every time I take a little bit more risk because I just want it so badly, and which I don't want. So I try to be really aware of this kind of trap I can fall in, that I'm like, hey, anyway, last time I was here and now I push the envelope a little bit further, but actually last time I also was, I guess, at the limit, or I had my risk management in place, and from this year to like 2019 to now, it I think I didn't change. I didn't become more risky, or I wanted to take more risk. I just said, okay, I learned from that year, and I felt more confident. Of course, you now I know already like what it feels to be at the South Summit, so this should give me more confidence in a way, and like not like keeps the stress maybe a little bit lower. But what was really difficult, and luckily up front I have a mental coach, and I worked with her on the issue that if I go there again, or if anybody has something where she goes always again to the same kind of place, you start to compare yourself to like your own performance and how you felt the year before, in my case, and then the 2 years before. And this was really something I felt stressing me out now when I was there, and I was slower going just from base camp to camp 1 or something like this, and I'm like, oh shit, something is off, and like, but then we really work that we don't compare it to the attempts before. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if I'm now 10 minutes slower than in 2019, and so I tried really super hard to focus on that and stay in the kind of present, and don't compare myself to my own performance and feelings. And also like the whole acclimatization thing is always different, and then you kind of, more often you go there, on the one side you know way better how your body kind of feels, works, how you can push it, but the downside is that you always compare it, of course, to how you felt when you felt your best in whatever year it was. And this was really mentally quite a tough challenge, I have to say. And there I was like really during the expedition, because I did some things differently. I didn't run so much like the expedition before, like on the kind of down days where I just love to do my trail running thing. And this time, luckily, I was trekking in with my girlfriend, and we went to Mera Peak, and we took it really, really slow. I only pushed it like 1 or 2 days when I went on my own and went up Mera Peak, like up and down, and tried to be there fast. But then the rest of these kind of acclimatization days, I was really totally easy trekking, and maybe that's actually the better thing. And so this was really, really good, and I looked way less on my watch in terms of like how fast I am from A to B. Still, of course, like you kind of can't resist and kind of look on it, but this was really, yeah, like cool then in the end for me to have it, the start of the expedition, a little bit different, and having there really kind of nice and slow and easing in more. And then on the mountain, I tried just not to compare it. And luckily there, the conditions were super good this year. So I was anyway always more on the kind of best performing side. So there it was easier. If you perform better or matching your kind of expectations, then it's easy. Then you don't have this kind of trap you can fall into. So this was luckily, and then especially on the summit day, I felt really, really good. I felt better than the last time I was up there. I felt better the 2021 and 2019. So there it was then kind of easy to get over this.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the problem for sports where there's, the cadence is very low. So you have, it's one opportunity per year, and then it's, another year comes around. Whereas, if you're doing, there are sports that you compete at a high level every week. It does make it harder. There's more pressure. What happened in 2019 when you got to the summit slope? How did you, when you saw the queue, was it instantaneous? You knew like that was it, or did you wait for a while? Or
No, I didn't wait for a long time. I just like went over the south summit and then like in the stand there, and I saw there was still really a lot of people kind of more on the way down. And at the same time, the weather kind of changed a little bit and not any more sunny. So that was like, then this kind of two things, the combination was pretty clear to me right away, that because like I said before, I try to anticipate all these kind of situations and what I will do. So they were just coming like, boom, this kind of two red flags, and I turn around. So it was not really difficult to make this decision up there. Was pretty clear. And this is always the lucky case if it's kind of clear. It's way worse if the weather is kind of meandering around and kind of a little bit bad and a little bit, and you get a little bit cold and then again a little bit warm, where you kind of, these things are way more difficult. And now in retrospective, I'm also really happy that I turned around there, because just knowing now how long it was from where I turned around to the summit, and the time it would have taken me with all these people and waiting and navigating them, and it's just not possible to really get by each other there or overtake properly. It's like, it would be really not anymore in my personal kind of like risk, like barriers where I want to move on these mountains.
well, it sounds like the universe had something better planned for you in 22. So
yeah, maybe that, and that's what I think now. I mean, it like I said, it couldn't be better. And I don't know when it was the last time that somebody was really so alone up there on a summit for this period there, at least. And I know some people for sure, they summit maybe really early, but then like really alone, like then most of them, they have a sherpa and they're like in a team. So it's so different. And I only know, from Kilian, when he was in 2017, he was in the night from the north side alone up there as well. So, but at least the difference, I could really enjoy the views in that way.
Yeah, you had it all to yourself. I mean, but you got some amazing footage as well. You're the master of the GoPro.
Well, it's this kind of 360 camera, and it makes it just really, really easy, because afterwards you kind of stitch it together and put it like you wanted. But filming up there is always, I guess everything need to be so easy. I mean, it starts with drinking, eating, and then and ends with kind of filming. And I had years where I had a bigger camera, but I don't take it out of the backpack, and it's for nothing. So I don't take it. The same with the drinking. It is like here in the front, it's more like a running kind of trail running setup where I have it in the front. So everything what makes things easier, you need to make them easier there, because otherwise you just don't do it.
No, it's such an effort to, take your gloves off, whatever it is. I mean, even just to think about it. No, it's an effort. Yeah. So where does this in your body of work, where does this sit, do you think? Was this the hardest thing you've done?
I don't know. It's really difficult to kind of quantify it in that way, but definitely, especially the descent then, was something I never was, I think, so tired. And as well, when I then kind of see how long, like when I arrived back home, I was really empty for like a week or something like this. I just slept and was really kind of feeling this kind of, and not from a illness or something like this, where sometimes, I don't know when it was the last time, but there you kind of think, oh my God, you feel so weak. But there it was just because of this one day in a way up there. And so for sure that is pretty high, at least it's like in the top 5 of my kind of hardest thing I've ever done for sure.
So on the descent, what did you went from the summit to camp 3 or to camp 2? Or?
Yeah, I went to Camp 3. I went down to Camp 4. I went inside my tent. I started the stove, melted snow, drunk, and then packed everything, and then went down. So this, and then this whole rest was for around, I don't know, 4 hours, something like this. And then I went down from Camp 4 to Camp 3 because I left my sleeping bag in Camp 3. I didn't have a sleeping bag at South Call. I had only my tent, my mattress, and my stove. And so then I went down to Camp 3, pitched my tent, like put it up again, which took ages. And this is also like this huge difference on like if you're there with like a sherpa who's doing that for you, or if you do that alone. And it's like it was really sometimes like a grotesque comedy kind of play I if I would witness myself, because you just, I put out my tent on this platform and then I sit down and then I watch, and then at one point after, I don't know, felt like an eternity, you're like, okay, you speak to yourself and you're like, okay, come on, now move, put these poles in the tent, and then otherwise we cannot go in there. And you have again this kind of conversation with yourself, and you always need just to motivate yourself for for the smallest kind of thing, which normally just goes like clack, 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 and then it's done. And after the summit, it was really, I was so kind of like, okay, now we do this and this. And so it was really sometimes, yeah, I thought, oh my God, if somebody would see me now, they would think, yeah, what's wrong with this guy?
I mean, how do you motivate yourself at those points? Like, I mean, it seems, I mean, it is a different sport that you're doing, you know, to do this on your own, be the totally self-reliant as you are. What are you saying to yourself? Like,
well, I think I like on these things, I'm like, hey, it needs to be done, and it's good for nothing. Like if I just wait, because it doesn't solve itself. So
yeah.
with these practical things are also kind of going down. I'm always like, hey, we can make it now longer, the kind of suffering, we just make it longer, so better you move now, and it maybe is a little bit painful now, and it's kind of, you know, but make it, at least we move in the right direction, and it's doesn't extend this kind of, you know, like yeah, like for me, that this is like where I always like feel the best motivation in this situations there. On the way up, it's different, because there you always have this kind of possibility, hey, we could just turn around, David, what are you saying? Then it would be over. And you're like, no, we don't do this, because we put so much in here, and you know, like, you know how it feels when we arrive there, and you worked so hard for you. So I try to kind of in that way, and then sometimes I just switch off and just like focus on really the steps, like do this kind of 3 steps now, and this is most of the time it's like this, that up there I just try to kind of, you know, take a point and like the next fixing anchor or the stone there, or let's go, like now it's only probably 100 steps to the south summit, so we do this in, I don't know, 10 times 10 steps. So you try to make this kind of plays with yourself and break it down, and then you make this 10 steps, and then after every 10 step you have this break, and you kind of look around and you take your this is then the time where you, okay, now I take it, like, you know, make a short mental break, and then okay, now back again, the next 10 steps, do that. And so this is kind of what record kind of plays in my head.
Yeah, compartmentalization is, you know, it's super important for but like breaking these things down into like sections. So that's something you're doing constantly.
I mean, I think with these huge things, I mean, you know it better. I mean, that's why I'm so impressed with your kind of rowing feet. You're there in front of you, because it's so big, it's so long, it's so kind of like, you know, what do you think on the first kind of stroke? Hey, how many like strokes we have in front of us now for crossing the Atlantic? It is, no, and that's the same with these 8,000 meter peaks. You arrive in base camp, and oh my God, they're so big, and like, yeah, you start to break it down. And I mean, this was, for example, for me on Nanga Parbat, even more intimidating. Everest, it's not so intimidating for me, especially from this side somehow. And I know it. I'm been there quite a lot, and I trek there, and I go running around and this kind of stuff. So, but for example, on Nanga Parbat, because it's really so big, it's the biggest phase. there we have the Rupal side, and the base camp is 3,600 meters. And so you have this kind of endless big face, and it's steep. It's like, it's not kind of nicely with terraces to the back. It's kind of, you really kind of, you look up and you get like a stiff neck. And there I really had to kind of, like remind myself, hey, it's super big, but we do it step by step. And now we first, let's see how the conditions are, and we get to, camp 1 or camp 2, or to this side or to that spot, and then we see from there. And so that's definitely the way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely had that in 21 when I came to base camp and I looked up and I was like, wow, that's a long way up. And you just gotta, compartmentalize and just keep going through each section. I guess, I mean, talk to us about Pakistan. I mean, it's so different in that you're in such a more remote part of the world. I mean, ultimately, if your Everest ascent does end prematurely, you get to Kathmandu quite quickly. But you're so, Pakistan in the Karakoram, it's so remote. It feels like it must feel like a totally different experience in that sense. That you're disconnected.
Yeah, totally. It is. I mean, it's just being alone on an 8,000 meter peak with there. I'm not alone. I'm with my climbing partner. The same was, for example, for Shisha Pangma, because we were the only team on the whole mountain. There was not even another team on the other side of the mountain. So we were really alone. And from the kind of like remoteness and loneliness, it feels so much more intense than on Everest. Even I was alone there on the summit, because I knew that there were like these other people somewhere here on the same kind of fixed line and the same route on the mountains, and that's why, I mean, you never can call the Everest kind of climb solo in the way I did it. And on Nanga Parbat in winter, it was like, I mean, there are shepherds in base camp, so you have actually kind of some people around you, but still, once you're on the mountain, there's nobody, and there are no fixed ropes, and your alpine style is the style we choose there, really like real alpine style. We want to see if that's possible, and so that felt so intense in a beautiful way. It's like this kind of like intense feeling is what I love to experience there, and see how I deal with it, and it does something with you, and it makes you even more humble. I feel always, and it just shows you how small we are on these mountains, or in general.
But did you feel more vulnerable there, or do you how do you approach the solitude? Do you embrace it, or I mean, is it something that you have to talk to yourself and reassure yourself, or I mean, it is very isolated there.
In winter. It is, and definitely it is compared to. It is, like I said, it's for sure more challenging compared to like an Everest, where you never feel this kind of alone. And there, I mean, it's so important to be with a climbing partner who you have this infinite trust, and where you work really as a clockwork, and still it's super important also to have like conversations or discussions about topics where we are maybe not on the same page. So this is super important as well, that we share these, and that's what also brings, like, is part of our risk management, that if somebody feels something feels off, that we share this. I think that's in general something which is in all kind of life situations super important, that we share these fears, that we share. And it doesn't come from a weakness, it comes from a strength, and it makes the team stronger if we share, and like, hey, I fear that color or whatever, but I can't kind of put a kind of, I don't know exactly why, but something is off, and this is enough for us to kind of talk about it, and then we try to analyze it, and then we come to a conclusion. And if one of us would have still the kind of fear something is off, we turn around, and if we can't eliminate it through a safety measurement or through whatever else it's kind of necessary. And this is, I think, vital to survive in these environments where often it just comes from this gut feeling, and gut feeling is something which comes over years from all these kind of experiences we have in the mountains in life, and so we absolutely need to get sensitive for it and value it, and kind of talk about it with our teammates, and the teammates can, like, a partner in life or the partner on the mountain. So it's I think something which is really something, for example, I try also to kind of, what I get from mountaineering to in my normal life, in my other relationships in life.
Yeah, I mean, collaboration is like super important in everything. I mean, looking at the people that you've climbed with, the partners, I mean, they're all the greats of the current era. I mean, how do these all come about, or is it just natural that you all fit in with each other because you're all the super elite, and at some point you're all looking for someone to climb with? But if you talk about Simone Moro or Kilian Jornet, Uli Stek, Ove, I mean, what's different about them? What's the same about them?
Well, I think it's not that with all of them it kind of worked in the way, that I say, like, hey, that's like how it should be, or not. It doesn't work always like this, and definitely it's not that just because we are maybe all elite it kind of works. I think that's the tricky part. It needs to be way more, and sometimes when for example, with Uli Stek, I was really afraid kind of teaming up with him, because I saw, like, oh my God, from what I just read in the kind of news, or how he is, maybe we're not in the same risk management kind of category and this kind of stuff. And there it was super nice to see that actually we made always the same kind of decisions, and we were always agreeing on, hey, that's now too dangerous, I mean, it's stupid to do that, let's turn around, and this kind of stuff, and so it worked there really well. And so I think you just and these kind of things you just need to see if it works or not. And so and this is, like, for sure, I know some elite athletes out there where I say, like, I kind of respect what they are doing, but it would never work in a team.
Sure. So it just kind of, so they were on like a project basis, like projects would come up, or they would approach you, or with Uli Stek?
Yeah, I mean, I have kind of my more or less fixed partners. I mean, I started, for example, with Gerlinde. I was like, she's an Austrian. She's the first woman who climbed all 8,000 meter peaks, all 14 8,000 meter peak without oxygen, without.
I wanted to ask
sherpa.
you about Gerlinde, because she's so underrepresented on social media. She's so low key.
Yeah, I know she is, but that's so her amazing persona. But I started with her, and it was like really amazing team. So, and with her I did like a lot of expedition in this kind of period, and then she was finished with her project, and then I was still kind of want to go on expedition. So I looked for another partner, and then at one point I teamed up with Uli Stek, and it worked really great. Unfortunately, then just after one expedition, then the next year he died on Nuptse. And the same time I also really started the kind of to teaming up with Hervé Bamas, and with him it's also really, when we're on expedition, it works absolutely great, and it's exactly how I would like to have this relationship, and with my climbing partner there, to kind of that you don't have to discuss the things which are just taking energy. There are things which are really important to discuss, like we said before, but not these kind of things which are where you're on the same page or not, and we have the same style. We practice the same kind of ethics, I would say, when we are on expedition there, and have the same values, and from the fitness level it's also perfectly matching. So this is really good. With Kilian it was also super good, but I don't know if with him, for example, it's way more tricky that we then find expeditions where we match our kind of what we want to get out of it from the expectations of, like, you know, that's the other thing. Sometimes I have also other partners. I went on expedition where it was on a personal thing, amazing good, but we were just too different from the kind of disciplines we like. You know, if I went with one who was a really strong rock climber, and I coming more from this kind of alpine and more endurance side, and we tried to match because he's a really, really good friend, but it just didn't work. That we find this kind of, it's then super difficult to find the right goal. And I mean, I'm sure with Kilian, we have ideas we want to, you know, like do in the future. But let's see when this is, yeah, we don't know exactly when this will be.
And tell us about Uli, because he kind of pre-existed the Instagram era. So for younger people, and even myself that, you know, is newer into mountaineering, there isn't so much footage of him or so much information about him. What kind of person was he, and what would he be doing now if he hadn't had this accident? What were his big hopes and dreams, and where could he have taken it, do you think?
I mean, he was, for me, he was not only a really good friend, he became a really, really good friend in a very short time. But he was really a mentor, and this was his kind of one of his great kind of traits, that he was super open and tried to always get better, to improve, to get information, to see what are these kind of people doing, like how they solve this kind of problem, and how they kind of approach mountaineering here, or trail running there, or skiing, or totally other sports. And he was not this kind of, he was a kind of god in a way for mountaineering, on climbing, but he was totally open to share it. And even, yeah, he was so famous, he had not any kind of like star behaviors in that way. So and he, yeah, I think he was really gave the whole, especially the Himalaya climbing thing like a different or a really strong input, I would say. And just again emphasizing more on style, on this kind of lightness, which, and combining it with like things he saw and learned from ski mountaineering and trail running. And so he was there, yeah, and he pushed for sure the boundaries, or open a new chapter with his kind of Annapurna solo climb, with Shishapangma, where he was before, where he just tried to climb these mountains in like a single day, and it was done on a single push, and it was done before as well. So we shouldn't forget this. Like even in the really early days, there were strong guys, and they tried this and they succeeded. And but it was somehow, I think it got a little forgotten, and he just put it again on the big stage. And I think, I don't know anybody who was able to do 8,000 meter climbing in this style, and then coming back home and climb right away super strong rock climbing, sport climbing, 8A and higher like this. And he was in all these disciplines, like, so on such a high level, whereas I'm, for example, my sport climbing is just absolutely pathetic nowadays. It's a hobby because I just can't kind of keep the training for these high mountains up and somehow stay strong for sport climbing. So I just, like, at one point I sacrificed this, or I made the decision that it's not important for me anymore. It's a hobby, and if I go out, I'm super happy and enjoy a day on rock and sport climbing, but I climb like absolutely, yeah, like on a level which is just, yeah, it's fun, it's recreational.
And what happened after his accident? I mean, how did that obviously would have had a huge effect on you, but how did it make you evaluate everything, like, you know, the climbing, the projects that you wanted to do, the projects that you were going to do with him?
Well, it was, of course, it affected me, and I still miss him, and I lost like a really, really good friend, and I lost like a climbing partner where I dreamed of doing this and that, and we had all kind of dreams there out, and then of course this side that makes you then in a way kind of angry, and you're like, damn, well, why you kind of left us now when we had so many cool things like coming up, which is selfish, but it didn't change my way of that. I had not a single moment. I had for sure like a couple of days where I didn't feel this kind of drive, because I was on an expedition when he died. I was on Shisha Pangma, where I was with Uli Steg in 2016, and then 2017 I wanted to go immediately back, and he had already another project there on Everest and Nuptse, and so I teamed up with Hervé, and we were on Shisha Pangma, and I was exactly on this place where I was a year before with him, and then we got the message that he had this accident and he died. And so I was this surreal kind of situation where I totally kind of did the climb, exactly the hike, the area, the base camp, the tent exactly was there where his tent was, like the year before, and it was, I think, the best place I could be, and I had a couple of days where I didn't want to go anymore there back to the mountain. I just needed my time, but I knew that it comes again, and when I'm now in the mountains, I feel way closer and kind of feel, hey, and I always have this kind of moments where I'm like, hey, Uli, I think you would love to have this kind of day here with me. I think so. So I for me, it's not something where I think, oh my God, this is like too dangerous, because I know it's dangerous, or it has his kind of risks, and still it gives me at the moment way more than what kind of the risk kind of hold back on the other side, or the balance there. And so that's why I don't have from these losses the kind of desire to, or that it changes something from how much I'm kind of drawn to the mountains.
Yeah, there was a beautiful post you did where you visited the memorial, before your ascent, and I was going to ask you, did you feel close to him or during the climb? I'm sure you did.
I did. Yeah, definitely. I do, and I have there, like, I go up there and I'm like, he's also one of these kind of motivation pieces I need. Like if I kind of it's one of these kind of strings I can pull on my motivation, kind of saying that I'm like, hey, come on, if Uli would be like, here, you would do this now and go further, and come on, now you go another kind of 10 steps. And so and it's really nice there, because there is this memorial of him, and I always go quite a lot from base camp to Ferrice, and it's in between there, because I always go down to Ferrice for my kind of recovery days. And so I always stop there and have like a short conversation with him in that way, and say hello, and it feels really good, and it's nice. Yeah, it's good for me.
Oh, that's amazing. No, it's interesting, like for the motivation, like where what you can draw on at different times, like what you need in different moments. Like sometimes it's hurt or loss, or all these things can fuel you if when you're stuck and you need something to go for another hour or however long.
And sometimes it's anger. And this is also underrated, and you just need, because I'm really bad in this sometimes. It's something I also work with my mental coach, that you accept that you get angry sometimes about things, or feel this anger about something, but then you just need to make the turn and don't kind of put it into something negative. You just make the turn, and then you take this energy, because there's a lot of energy there, into something which actually brings and moves you forward. So it can be
for me it's often insecurity or hurt or times when I've been embarrassed or humiliated. I pour all these things in sometimes, and sometimes it's just pure like I just feeling because I'm happy, or I'm so glad to be in this beautiful place, but I'm pulling on lots of things. For you, what's your main North Star? Like when you're there, when you're doing these insane challenges, what are you thinking of? What's the main motivation? Is it to know yourself better, or your capabilities, the limits? What's really pushing you?
Oh, that's a difficult question. I mean, I think the number one there would be that I really try to experience something which I haven't before. Like this is my motivation, where it's a personal kind of pushing myself out of the comfort zone. It's not about, for me, it's absolutely not important if this is a first in the kind of, I don't need to be the first from Germany, or the first human who climbed this, or doing a first ascent or something like this. It's kind of was never my kind of main motivation. I have other friends, for them is really like, it needs to be this first ascent. They want to be the first human who's doing this. And for me, that's absolutely, somehow, I don't know why, it's not this kind of strong motivation to doing something. It's nice if this happens, of course, but it's absolutely, for me, it's really like how it needs to be this first for myself, for how I kind of, and this can be, the hike today I did just before an interview here, like, so I just was like trying to get up this one mountain which I haven't been. It's like I can see it here out of my window, and I knew there was not a real pass, and I know here in northern Spain is like this really spiky high grass, and this always ends in this disaster. But I just had this kind of, okay, let's see how I can get up there and hopefully can fly down. And it worked out halfway, but at one point I was asking myself, oh damn, I mean, why, how is so stupid? And I knew this would happen, that I end up in this kind of totally bloody leg kind of thing with, and kind of being angry about why here no ways, or no hiking paths probably maintained, and all of this. But I just wanted to see for myself like how it is to get up there. And I think this is like the beauty on mountaineering, that you don't have, it doesn't have to be Everest. It can be a stupid hill here, like just in front of my house.
Yeah, I think that's a sign that you're operating on a different level, that you don't have to be the most or the first or the fastest, that you're it's for the experience and what that can mean to you. Were you ever like that when you were younger? Did you ever, was it more like ego driven, like I have to be this, I have to be, or have you always had this kind of awareness that it's just an experience? And
I don't know. I mean, I never did really like any competitive sport. I only did mountaineering, and this isn't in this way. I mean, I never did also like sport climbing competition and this kind of stuff. Even I would say I'm quite competitive. If you put me with someone, like on the trail, on the bike or whatever, I don't like to kind of lose in that way. So it's like I kind of, or if we play a game, I definitely want to win. So I have this competitive thing, but for these challenges, I think it was always in a way like this, and I just wanted to see always. I have this intrinsic, I think you say, motivation, where I have no problem to start training again now, and having something. I need always some kind of thing which I work towards, but then it's irrelevant, and then I enjoy the kind of process. And it was always in a way like that I always loved to train. I remember when I started, then really, okay, now I want to climb like more difficult, like sport climbing wise. I was cycling. I lived in Munich as my parents, going to high school, like every afternoon and 4 times a week, cycling across Munich to the only climbing gym at this time, which they had, and building my indoor climbing wall and stuff like this. So I put a lot of kind of time and energy in this, but it was not because I want to be like winning a competition. It was just that I want to be like the best of myself in this kind of discipline, or want to improve, let's say.
And what about suffering, or how do you see suffering, or how do you see struggle, or do you draw the boundary at struggle? Is it, do you embrace suffering? Is that something you're looking for, or the pushing, the physical
Well,
endeavor?
I wouldn't say it's something I I'm looking for. I mean, I'm happy if I don't have in a way, and I just can enjoy it. And I try to minimize it in a way also with training and suffering maybe more on training than on the actual kind of climb or feat. But I know it will happen, and I know it's part of the game, and then I embrace it, and it then motivates me, and I had often, for example, that I when I had to trail and the conditions were really nasty, excuse me, that I often get super angry. And this now I have totally, or most of the time, under control, in the way that I say like, hey, I mean, I'm the one who choose to be there, and and I go often in this, again, like a conversation with the mountain in this time, and like, hey, you can throw whatever you want. Like, I arrive, I reach this kind of the top of this slope, and then I know then we change, and the other, my team partner has then the next part or something like this, and I draw so much energy actually out of it, and motivation of these kind of sufferings often. So it's where I think I'm not too bad, I would say, because I think otherwise maybe in this sport or discipline, it's something I think you need to have to, or you need to accept that it will happen. And the same is with this kind of waiting and disappointment of that you can't control everything, which is another thing which I really struggle and have worked a lot with my mental coach on, that I accept to be not in control of everything. I like to control everything, and I try to optimize everything, like from my gear, like every gram I count, I try to make it perfect. And then the stupid weather is not right, or there are too many people, or whatever. It's things I can't control when I go to this or that mountain. And this is not easy, that it affects me often in this kind of not good way, that I just kind of find it unjust, or why is now like not good from the conditions, and why it can't be this, and it's something I just need to accept, that that's part of the game. And this was also like a little bit in this post I did, which you mentioned before, where I put all my money on one card, and then you kind of, and then the game goes, and you can't control everything. You can't control which card you get next. This is kind of, then this is what you have, and you have to accept it.
Yeah. Tell us about the training, because you're famous for these steps that you do with the weighted backpack. Everyone knows about this. Kenton Poole was telling me about it. Where is this? Is this near your house in Spain? On the coast?
This is like, I'm really fortunate to have this near my house here in northern Spain, and it's like at the coast, down from a lighthouse, so it's on top. That is not only like this perfect, like it's like 750 really steep, unregular steps, like super old stone steps, so every step is like a little bit different from the height, which is perfect. And so it's not only the stair alone is like perfect for training, it's the setup, which is then super beautiful, because you have the Atlantic Ocean, the lighthouse down, and every time it's like different from the light. And so it's really, that's why I think the people also remember, because it's so picturesque in a way, and it's always a really great sufferfest in that regard when it comes to training. And it's perfect, exactly what you need for, and what you also, people should always remember, you don't need, because I get a lot of questions, hey, I'm living out in the mountains, how can I ever be as good as you, or be training for mountaineering? And you just need to be more creative. Than in the winter, I live in Chamonix, and there it's easy. I have it like on a nice kind of platter in front of me, the best playground for mountaineering, but actually here in Spain it's equally good. And so finding these stairs, of course, it's then more motivating often if you know the place is beautiful or so whatever, but in the end, even like an ugly stair. Like I was training for a marathon one time, and I was running around the airport here because it's really nice and flat, and it's like a loop, so you can go really loud. So, and it's like really not beautiful. It's like on the one side you run through this industrial thing, and but it's like it's cool. Like then I like this, and so you just need to be creative to find your kind of training where you can do for mountaineering and stuff. And so for me, that this is like, yeah, really cool. And I do a lot of this kind of strength endurance training there, which then prepares me really nice for the 8,000 meter peaks.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's great about these videos, you know, obviously it's so beautiful, but you have these people that are just on a walk, and suddenly the sort of look on their face as you come running past them with like this weighted backpack, the surprise. I mean, it's no, you've created some great.
Yeah, I mean, this is like, and this is really this is really cool here, because in Spain, this is the difference between Spain and Germany. In Germany, they were telling you like off because you like, it's way too like, hey, what are you doing here? It's way too dangerous, and you know, actually it shouldn't be allowed to run here because it's stairs and whatever. This is Germany. And here in Spain, it's like they're like, oh my God, how many times you up and down? Because you pass them more than once if they go up and down, and they like, they see you then again, and they start to kind of, you know, cheer for you, and it's super cool, this kind of interaction you have there with these people here in Spain. It's so cool, and they're so passionate, and they're immediately, it's like in Italy, they're immediately this kind of tifosi fans for whatever it is. So I really like that.
Tell us about your yoga, because some of the yoga moves that you can do are unbelievable.
Yeah, but well, you're the one who always like, you know, they're just for showing off. So it's like how it starts.
If I could do these moves, I would post them every day. But I mean, how long have you been doing it? What, you know, what is it's part of your routine? Are you doing it every day? Is that for injuries or for mobility, or why did you start it?
Well, I wished I would do them every day. I do it quite irregularly, and I go through phases where I have some phases or some weeks where I do them really almost every day. And then I have some weeks when I kind of being distracted with other stuff, with whatever comes around. And then suddenly I do it only once or two times a week. But that's kind of where we move here, like 2 times a week to every day a week, something like this. And for me, it is the best thing I found for having a routine for injury prevention, for stretching, for recovery, for strengthening my core, and for me it's always that and then these kind of exercises I have then for showing off and handstand, and this is the kind of thing which then I need again for this motivation to kind of do it. You know, I build in stuff which is the kind of puzzle piece where I kind of draw my daily motivation, and I kind of, okay, and this would be so cool. Like I started with kind of, hey, this would be so cool to be able to have this kind of from L-sit to handstand, and I didn't reach it so far, and I still work, but still it's super good. And if I manage to do that, for sure I will look for something else which kind of gives me this kind of extra boost of motivation to do it as much as possible, because then the other parts around it, the stretching, the core, and the kind of injury prevention and foam rolling, I just do now like add to it. I always try to add like more and more and or vary it a little bit, that it's not always the same. And I think this is the beauty on it, that you, from this kind of, and I call it yoga, but actually it's, you know, it's like a whole like area of different things. It's like this yoga, stretching, foam rolling, strength exercises. So it's this kind of weird mix. And for me, having it in a routine, in a kind of, then if you want to call it so, yoga flow, where I know, okay, now I do this, now I do this, it's just something which again keeps you kind of on the mat or doing this thing for this 30 minutes or 45 minutes or whatever it is. And I think that's another trick, just to have, if you struggle to do it every day, find something which is like, hey, this is kind of a cool thing which you would like to do. So this kind of a little bit of motivation you get, and then making a routine around it, and in like building, like adding things which you normally wouldn't do. I wouldn't go like on and just doing my foam roller, for example. It's just like I'm too lazy to it, I have to admit. But if I have it in this routine, I always finish with my foam rolling, so I do it. So this is like a trick where I know works for me. And I think it's something which, if somebody struggles with that like me before you started, and in general, coming back to a question, when I started with it, well, I think now I probably do it something like 10-12 years. When I went first in Munich to a yoga school and had just some lessons, and that's where it all started. And now I never have lessons, and I just do my routine. And nowadays there's no excuse, because on YouTube you find everything. So
well, you are a master. What tell us about Chamonix, because you're from Munich, but you've got this northern Spain Chamonix thing going on. How long have you been in Chamonix, and what do you like about it? I mean, the first time I went there, I just was blown away by it, and I've loved it ever since. But
yeah, I mean, I knew Chamonix since like ages. Like I think I was on the Aiguille Midi with my father the first time he took us up there, and I was, I don't know, 14 or something like this, and we skied the Vallée Blanche in winter, so, and then I'm also a mountain guide, a certified, so I was a lot in Chamonix for guiding, but I never lived there. And when I got together with my girlfriend, she is from northern Spain, and then we started this kind of like back and forth, that in winter, because here in northern Spain in winter it can be quite rainy and miserable and kind of not really cold but not really warm, and so we then started this kind of routine of in winter being in Chamonix, and in summer here in northern Spain, and it works really well. It's really nice to have this change of places with the change of season. And yeah, Chamonix, like you said, it's such an amazing playground for mountaineering and for outdoor sports in general.
For your flying,
it's hard to beat.
We haven't talked about your flying yet, because this is another thing that you do, which is amazing. Where do you do that most? I mean, we saw you do it at Nanga Parbat in winter. That was pretty incredible.
Yeah, that was like, but this was actually kind of like for this kind of down days, and I never flew from really high up, because we had always this really strong wind, so it was just possible like lower down, and then again, like there, I can't fly off and leave my climbing partner behind, so that's like another thing, because he doesn't fly, but it's something I started flying when I was 16, and I made the license in Germany at that time. But then I did it for 5 years, and then I stopped it because it was just not possible to combine it with my mountaineering and with the guiding and everything, and the equipment was so heavy. And then at one point, like a couple of years ago, the equipment became so light, and you have this really incredible new wings which weigh nothing, and harnesses which weigh nothing, and then suddenly again it made sense to take these light setup to the mountains and fly over Mont Blanc after you climb it, or Goettler, or whatever it is, and I hope one day I can also take it to a 8,000 meter peak. It is one of my dreams to fly off one of these, but for that I actually I need to improve my flying level, and I try to do as often as possible, but I still struggle to match my expectation of how good I want to feel or be before taking it to one of the big mountains. And so it's a thing which kind of like it takes time, and I don't know, I think in general I'm not a very brave person, so I really kind of especially when it comes to flying, where I really take my time, if you want to say so.
Well, it looks amazing.
It is amazing. It is really so incredible. The moment you kind of, your feet kind of leave the ground and you take off, it's just like one of these kind of best feelings there is.
Am I right in saying this is something you do with your dad as well?
Yeah, I mean he's doing it, and
he's still doing it.
And he's really, Yeah, he's 82, and yeah, I just chatted with him yesterday. He was flying, and
Yeah, incredible.
and so yeah, it's really cool. It's something, yeah, it's one of these sports you can do in, yeah, when you're pretty old as well. And he hates to run, so it's like it always needs to be a breeze there, because then you don't have to run so much. but but it works. Yeah, it's really cool to, of course, share these kind of, also the climbing. He comes in summer here, we climb something, or I visit them and we go climbing. It's really cool to share this kind of sports and this passion, which he kind of taught me, or he was the one who introduced me to it. And so it's very unique, yeah, to have this still now when he's so old, and enjoy this together.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, look, we're approaching the tail end, so I still have some questions for you, but I'm not going to keep you forever. What do you think is misunderstood about high altitude mountaineering and Everest in particular?
But I think we have to start to separate between the commercial side and the professional side. And at the moment, everything is under the same umbrella of like 8,000 meter. And these are two absolutely different disciplines. And for me, it's no problem if somebody uses oxygen and sherpas and has the best day and most remembered day in his life on when he climbs a mountain like Everest with all the help he can get. And I have also no problem if he flies down from Camp 2 with a helicopter. It's like, because it's the commercial side on it, and it's okay. The same thing we see on a Mont Blanc. On a Mont Blanc, I guide my client up there. I use every help we get from the telepheric, from the huts, from like whatever is there. And when we go down, we also don't go down back to Chamonix. The moment we arrive at the, I don't know, Cosmic or at the Guy de Midi telepheric, we take it. We don't go down there. So, and this is the commercial side on it. And it's not that this is like a bad thing in my point of view. It's like, for the person, it might be the incredible best day he ever had, and he will always remember it. But if you kind of promote yourself, mainly because nowadays everybody is able to promote himself as like an athlete, somebody who's doing something sport-wise recognizable, and you sell it that way, then we need to ban oxygen use, because this is like, it's the biggest doping possible we have there, and it's doping in every other sport. If you are not allowed to use oxygen in cycling, in any other sport, you're not allowed to pre-oxygenate, like before a competition, for example. And here they use it like all the way up to the summit, the whole kind of day. And this is the biggest change we have to, and we need to, the change of the game or they are happening, and it changes to climbing just like 6,000 meter peaks and instead of 8,000 meter peaks. And the difficulty of these mountains is that there is this kind of lack of oxygen, and if you take this away, then actually you don't. For me personally, I would never use it, because then I prefer to go on a 6,000 meter peak, and I wouldn't feel satisfied if I cheated there in that way. And like I said, this sounds now really harsh, but I only talk about professional athletes, or if somebody kind of sells it as something like this under this discipline. And if you do it for your personal kind of thing, then do it whatever you want. And then in general, both sides, we need to work on transparency and honesty in that way, that we really tell, and not in the kind of tense post we do about it. We need to tell it right away when everybody is still listening.
Yeah,
that you use oxygen, that you use fixed ropes, that you use whatever it is, and we all know exactly who doing this kind of sport, like what makes things easier and what kind of cuts corners, and where we kind of what we do there.
Yeah, I think they can all coexist. I think it's still true
Exactly.
that it's still true that
totally.
the biggest sponsorship deals, however you measure success, whether it's through the most sponsors, the most high profile sponsors, the films, these will always go to people like yourself that are doing it in a certain style. That there's a barrier for other people that if they climb in a certain way.
I don't agree on this. I think there we see people who use oxygen, who are like the biggest persons in this sport. Like if you look to Niemstai, he has at the moment the most famous 8,000 meter climber, and he's like where everybody thinks this is now 8,000 meter climbing, and for me it's absolutely, he's a really nice guy and he's an amazing businessman, but his feat of climbing 8,000 meter peaks is for me not something which I can applaud on in a sport wise achievement. It might be like a really great thing for elevate the sherpas and this kind of thing. It's absolutely, everything is there. It's not that I kind of don't see this, and it's amazing. But if we talk about like a sport achievement historical thing, it's like it's nothing.
Yeah, I mean, I think in his defense, he did have the velocity of there was a short period of time that, I mean, if for example, if you were to go, I mean, how many of these could you fit in? Do you think is reasonable? How much time do you need to recover? I mean, there's such big exertions on your body. I mean, like what how many
but this is, I don't know how many, and probably not many, to be honest. But that doesn't mean that we start then to make them 6,000 meter peaks, because if we talk about 6,000 meter peaks, which it is when you go with an oxygen mask, then 6,000 meter peaks in that period of time, which are also technical, absolutely like there's no technicality, like there's no technical skills. It's hiking really on the normal routes on 8,000 meter peaks. It's absolutely feasible to do 6,000 meter peaks in 7 months. So it's for me, like I said, like there I can't kind of say that I'm impressed by the sport achievement. I'm impressed by the logistics he pulled off, impressed by like the team he kind of has around him, which are doing such a great job. I'm impressed by how he managed to kind of raise all this money. Like he's a great businessman, and this kind of the things where I can pull my head off, and but not for the other thing. I'm sorry.
Well, we saw you in the Alex Lowe film, and how did that come about? Or how, I mean, do you remember this day well when you found Alex Lowe?
Yeah, of course I remember that day, and this was Visually Stag 2016 on Shisha Pangma, and we were kind of like just like had a kind of exploring day, and we're kind of seeing what the rest of this kind of south face looks like, and that's why we kind of went a little bit detour from the kind of where normal people, anyway, this is not the normal side of where the normal route is on Shisha Pangma, so there are not very few people, and it was a warm year where it was less snow, and over time it was maybe inevitable that they kind of, the two bodies melted out of the ice there, and we stumbled across them, and then we just put one and one together, because there are really so little expeditions there and so little which had accidents, and then just we kind of and luckily I know Conrad, or we both know Conrad, and he's also a TNF North Face teammate, so I called him, and that's then how it came.
Yeah, it was a powerful film. So in terms of, I think you're right that there is, this whole world of, this 8,000ers without supplemental oxygen that people don't know the effort, everything that goes into it. I mean, have you got a good film in you? Do you feel like is that coming? Are there projects that you want to have filmed, or what's next for you?
Well, I don't know if this is like a good film right now, and let's see what maybe. I mean, I'm thinking about it right now if we should put something together, but maybe something shorter. Let's see. This kind of no, too early to say it will happen. Um, and what's next for me is like for sure I have this list of kind of expeditions and dreams I wanna see if they are possible at one point in my life, and so this list I think is never finished, and it's a good thing, and you again have to accept that it won't happen everything there on the list. And so let's see what the next thing will be. At the moment I haven't decided what I do as a really big expedition next, but I play, for example, to sign up for a trail race here in Spain, like an ultra trail race, like 84 kilometers here in the close by mountains. This is kind of, again, like this kind of smaller intermediate kind of objective to just like start keeping my motivation on this level, or put it on this level where it's just nice to have it to do your daily grind.
Yeah, amazing. Well, look, we look forward to following. I'm sure you got so many projects ahead of you. There's always, for me anyway, periods where I feel more settled, and then times where I feel more like I'm ready to go and I have to do one of these projects or dreams that I have. And so we look forward to following yours and seeing what's next. I'm sure it will be something out of this world. You're breathing very rare air.
Yeah, same on my side.
I mean, do you have?
Same on my side. I'm cheering you. I'm cheering for your kind of next feature. I'm really like, this is the thing where I'm totally hooked and always so impressed. Like this kind of stuff, where really, like you try to push there something which is for me unimaginable. Kind of the because, for example, ocean is or water is this element where I'm really kind of like I like it more in this kind of cold frozen form and water, and so it's really impressive.
No, I mean, I'm looking forward to it. I think it's different to, it's more constant. It's all the time. There's no let up. It's 24 hours a day, but at the same time I don't think it carries the same risk as high altitude mountaineering. I don't feel like I've been scared in the mountains. I don't think I'd be scared so much on the ocean rowing, but it's different. It's good to try.
Really, I would be scared like crazy. I mean, I go here in the Atlantic just swimming from the beach, just like for like 5 minutes, and I go like very rarely in because it's always too cold for me. And my girlfriend always laughs about me that I'm such a kind of whiny, like German, but I cannot swim relaxed there. I love to swim in the pool doing my lanes, but swimming in the ocean, like whatever is there, and here's nothing really dangerous, no sharks or anything, but I swim, something touches my hand, it's just like maybe some weed or whatever, a seaweed, and I'm like, oh my God, what is this? Deadly. Everything is like, because I don't know it, I'm like, oh, I'm totally scared. Or the depth and like
sea swimming is hard. Sea swimming is hard. Yeah. Look, I'm sure it will be tough. It's a grind, but I wanted to do something different. I've got the row, and then I want to do a cross-continental cycle, and obviously the 8,000. So these are the things in my mind, and I'm always like you, probably not to the extent that you are, but trying to think like, what's an interesting thing to do? How could I test myself? What's a good project for this year? And so I just, I'm trying to keep myself interested. I'm trying to keep moving forward, and seeing where I can go with it. And
exactly how I approach it. It's good.
Great. It was fascinating talking to you, David. I can't thank you enough. And looking forward to following you. For people that don't follow you, your Instagram is
David _GOETTLER.
Okay, well, I'll tag you in that. But thanks again, and good luck with everything, and look forward to following you.
Thank you for the great conversation.
Great,
Bye.
thanks, David.